Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can all hear me. My name is Kuldip Sandhu, and I'm here with my partner and colleague, Sunando Chaudhuri, where we are hosting our webinar session around adapting the events industry to the new norm. We have an hour session. Our webinar will be covering these three topics. I'm going to do a brief introduction to myself, and Sunando will introduce himself. Then we've got a set of slides that we'll run through, which will hopefully last about 35-40 minutes maximum. And then we're going to try to open it up to Q&A and discussion. A bit of housekeeping rules. Everybody's on mute. We are recording the webinar, and we will post it up in the LinkedIn web stream, and also we'll be putting it onto YouTube as well, so everybody who hasn't been able to join can review it and see it in the future. And finally, just in terms of the presentation, as we go along, we like to encourage everybody to ask questions. Please use the Zoom chat function for you to put your questions. Sunando and myself will be looking at those questions, and then we can try to answer them to the fullest towards the end of the webinar. As I said, I'm Kuldip Sandhu. I'm the Managing Director of Innovative Quality Solutions. We're a digital and IT transformation consultancy, and we sit at the intersection between business and IT, and we help align IT to the digital and business strategy for organizations. We've worked across public and private sector, and over the last couple of years I've been working with the Excel Convention Centre, helping them in an interim capacity to transform their IT function and move to the digital smart venue agenda. Sunando, do you want to just do a brief introduction as well?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody, and good afternoon, evening, wherever you're joining from, and thanks for attending the webinar with us. So I'm Sunando Chaudhuri. I work as the technology advisor for ADNEC, the Abu Dhabi's National Exhibition Center, and the company. So I've been associated with ADNEC for the last 5 odd years. Prior to that, I was with mostly all my life with technology firms. But I did support IBM. I did support ADNEC prior to that as well. So my association with the events business is for a bit longer than the time that I've worked with ADNEC. So with that, I think I'll again hand it over back to Kuldip to move on to the next second part of the.
Sure. Thank you, Sunando, for that. I'm going to be talking really from a business context, and Sunando will go into a little bit more details around the technology side. But I wanted to firstly talk about the impact of COVID-19 and the impact it's had socially and economically everywhere across the world. And I thought the only way I can really present this is by showing you some data. I'm a very data-rich individual, so I've got some plots that I want to show you what the impact of COVID has been on the world. There's 4 here. The first one at the top right shows the impact, on the stock market and share prices, and you can see in the February-March time, and you can see that dip of the overall share price of the Nikkei, Dow Jones, and FTSE 100 dropping by 35%. And I know it's been recovering, but you can see the global shock that the pandemic has induced. We even had, as you can see in the graph in the middle, US oil prices turn negative, which is unprecedented. And finally, on the far right, you can see what the impact of COVID has had on US unemployment. You can see the figures between Obama and Mr. Trump. And I think, there's something like 10 million US unemployed at the moment. In the UK, we're all aware of the furlough scheme, and I think something like close to 8 million UK employees have been furloughed, which is close to a third of the working population in the UK. And that's kind of setting some context, but importantly from a technology perspective, you can see the final kind of graph at the bottom left there. as you see on the screen, is the impact that that COVID has had on some of the technology companies. And for example, there's three there. You know, there's Zoom, and you can see Zoom's share price has rocketed by 130%. A cloud-based collaboration tool that we are using now for this webinar, and you can see Netflix, where people are staying at home, working remotely in their spare time, watching set boxes, and Amazon, with its service delivery model, has absolutely benefited from this. So whilst there's been a massive worldwide impact economically and socially, there are some winners from this, and I'm focusing in on those tech side, because as we go through this presentation, technology is going to be key as we walk this through. So what does that mean from to the events industry? I think there's been a shockwave across sectors, and I was thinking about how do I bring this across, and I went back a couple of years and I looked at a presentation that I did, which captured a paper by AMR, which showcased what the kind of events and exhibition industry were and going through, and what they will go through in the future. And you can see Exhibition 1, Exhibition 1.x, and Exhibition 2. And I think the pre-COVID era was this move to Exhibition 1.x. The industry had moved very much from a selling space, from a venue perspective, very much from a sales-driven perspective, and it was really now trying to embrace technology as an enabler for digital change. And it was very light on data. A lot of venues, retail organizations, and stadium were starting to merge and put the customer at the heart, of the center of the experience. And they were capturing data to understand, to provide more of a personalized service, and using technology to enable that experience, be that from digital signage to advertising to wayfinding, people counting. But hadn't really moved to Exhibition 2. That was the future. And I think what COVID-19 has done is accelerated that digital journey. It's given the impetus and the momentum for the industry to move into a more digital era. As a senior IT leader, I've worked in lots of IT departments, and as I've been talking to senior IT leaders, they've been telling me how well they've done over the last 6 to 8 weeks in ramping up remote working, and rolling out laptops, being able to have secure VPN access for staff that are working remotely. And that digital kind of remote working has become an exemplar project for them, and it's given them a lot of credibility with the C-suite. And therefore, I think what the opportunity for technology is to seize that moment. And I think this applies to the events industry to move to this Exhibitor 2, and that has to be done in a very prudent way. And what that Exhibitor 2 is what we're going to try to talk about in terms of digital change. And what that Exhibitor 2 to me means, thinking about how you can generate more value-based revenue streams in multiple events, again visitor-led, data-led, and making the experience more immersive. So what does that mean for an events industry, and what do they need to do as we've moved into, now we've been in a lockdown period and we're going to start easing? And what this slide I'm trying to bring across in this slide is a view of what businesses and organizations, and including the events industry, really need to do. What they really need to do is pivot their business model. So the problem here is that there's an increased expectation for visitors at events to really move to a hybrid approach. And that hybrid approach is a mix of physical and virtual experiences, and how you deliver that to audiences that are going to be reduced in size because of the social distancing that's going to be applied, and quite rightly because of the health concerns and the nervousness that visitors are going to perceive when they go to events. And really what that means is making sure that the venues, stadiums, and retail organizations can really reinvent their business model. And that means looking at their strategy, looking at how they can deliver that strategy, and then thinking about what are the future competencies they need to ensure an enhanced experience physically and virtually in this hybrid model to, again, meet the needs of their audience. An example of that is, I think, there's going to be a significant shift to creating content online for organizers and exhibitors so that they can understand what that hybrid model is, and a refocus internally with marketing, sales, and event management staff to think about how they're going to create that content and maybe at a faster pace. Delivering event on virtually is a no mean feat, because the attention span for visitors is going to be shorter. You can't sense body language, and it's going to be difficult to ensure that enhanced experience is matched. And I think the prudent investments that are needed are really important, because when I was involved, like we all were, in the financial crisis in 2008, and one of the lessons I learned out of that was organizations that were able to adapt and pivot to the new norm and invest in innovation and in technology innovation in particular, they have survived and succeeded post the 2008 crisis. And I think that's the kind of thinking and mindset that senior leaders in our organizations need to adopt in an agile fashion, and leverage the strong working relationships that the events industry prides itself on the future. And what I want to finally say on this slide is that I am no way advocating that we will ever not have face-to-face events in the future. I think they will re-emerge as public confidence increases, but there's going to be still a larger element of this hybrid virtual on-site, off-site kind of model working. What that ratio is still to be determined. The timeline for that is pretty uncertain at the moment, but the guidelines, hopefully, and the controls that we'll put in for those events will help the industry as we move forward. What do I mean about digital and the digital impact on the events industry? What I try to do in this slide is just bring across some of the areas that I think will be strongly impacted. And I talked already. If you look at those areas where I've marked in red dots, online promotion and marketing is going to be important. Digital events, there's digital events has existed in the past. It's not new to the industry. LinkedIn, Gartner live events have been running for a long time, but making sure that there are going to be some newer kind of controls that I need to put in place is important. Online booking is very important. Is to make sure that the website experience for the visitor is understood, and who you're marketing to. The need for exhibitor venue apps as well as organizer apps are important for not only people counting and potentially thermal sensing of individuals who might have might not be well, but they will also help with that understanding of the social distancing, the 2 meters that we're talking about, especially in the UK. And then there's obviously digital showrooms. So that's kind of a circle of areas that I think are certainly going to play a more important context impact on events in this hybrid model. And my view, and as I've been discussing this with Sunando, is that actually having and evaluating the digital tools that you need will help you stay ahead, and that planning needs to happen now, and make the execution on that. My final slide before I hand over to Sunando is I wanted to share with everybody the kind of life cycle of the visitor or journey for a venue. Having worked in this industry for quite a while now, I've been looking at front, middle, and back office infrastructure. And the front office digital touchpoint tends to be, as you can see in this diagram, the digital signage, the wayfinding, and the getting to meeting rooms, the parking. The back office solutions tend to be the ERPs, the CRMs, the collaboration tool, venue management, and then the back office is supported with the building, facility, and energy management, and any communication infrastructure. But what I added in the bottom layer in this kind of hybrid model is to think about not just the analytics platform and the cloud, but more importantly, the cloud platform and the new digital studios that we need to put in place to ensure that we can deliver those events seamlessly in that hybrid model. So I think that sets the scene for Sunando to go a little bit deeper on those digital and platforms and some of the examples and some of the challenges in that area. Over to you, Sunando.
Thank you, Kuldip. So we can move to the next slide. Yeah. So as Kuldip was kind of alluding to the fact that yes, it's not about only the environment, the back office, the front office. There's a new layer that has come in, which is the digital layer. And so what I'm going to talk about on this slide is primarily how do you build that digital environment? What do you need? What are you looking for really? So I mean, I think the first and the foremost element that is most important and is thinking about the customer in every which way. Whenever you're thinking about having a platform, having an environment, your needs has to be established from the customer. If you look at what's happening around the globe, and Kuldip shared some share prices earlier in the slides, and I'll just go not on share prices, but just on some other examples. So if you look at solutions like vFairs, and I'll give some examples, and just let me clarify. I've met a lot of partners and vendors who provide these kind of services, and I'm not saying one is better than the other or not. It's individual's requirement and choice, but I'll just give some examples so you understand. A platform like vFairs is very famous because it has a host of interactive tools, which is very easy for an end user access. Something which we all are aware of. Yeah, if you have seen the highest number of complaints that have come out around the globe is about Zoom, but today we are using it. And believe me, it's the most used tool at this point in time for a webinar kind of a digital environment, purely because their video quality is absolutely many times better than most of the other solutions. And that's what they're holding on to. And even with the numbers going down, the number of tools coming up, Zoom's popularity is still growing. Microsoft Teams, just because they are on pretty much every computer, their numbers are increasing. So they've gone up around 70% in the last 2-3 months. So what I'm trying to say is, end of the day, the tools which are, or the solutions, the digital environment which is closer to the user will progress and enhance. The other thing that I want to mention here on this slide is the capability of streaming. When you are looking at a hybrid environment model or a virtual environment digital model, you have to focus on the streaming capability, because you are looking at people who are remote and would like to see the content at the right time, the right quality, and getting the right message at the same time. You have to consider that, and something that needs to be looked at before you identify how you build your digital platform. Kuldip touched about digital studio. So if you have a digital studio or you're planning to build one, and it's important that you build a digital studio, especially for venues, because what happens is when you have a digital studio, when you're building a digital studio, it's not about just having a room with fancy lighting. You need to have the right technology which can actually work as a studio. So the audio visual becomes extremely important. So you need to think of every time how you are going to cater to an user who is not with you, in front of you, not live. So that should be the driving force. And what I want to finish this slide by saying, it's not about buying a software. A lot of organizers, a lot of venues are looking at just buying a software to take it forward. That's not the case. If you're looking to buy a software, it will not work, or it will be difficult. You'll not get the right output that you're looking for. So you have to be agile. You have to see what is your requirements. And another good example, Google Meet. I'm sure all of you have come across Google Meet. They launched it only for the G Suite, but immediately realized that launching it only for the G Suite users is actually taking away a huge market share, because people use the normal Gmail, which is the free version. They literally within a week, if you remember, literally within a week, they opened it up for everybody to use. Yes, still their video quality is not that great. However, it's a tool now available and the numbers are picking up. So with this, I'll move to the next slide, which is, if you can move to the next slide. One of the most important elements that I want to highlight. So a digital platform will have multiple components, and we mentioned about digital studio, etc. But the most important element of the whole digital environment is the platform. And that's the key to your success. So there are a lot of things that are already there, and you can read at your leisure. But the important thing that needs to be considered and looked at are, it should be available and accessible. So, and something that Kuldip also touched in his slide, there are lots of tools in the market. Don't try and build something on your own. Leverage them. Leverage the cloud infrastructure, because the cloud infrastructure, when I say available and accessible, it's extremely important that you look at the cloud-based solutions and where they are hosted. So what you would really like to see is a cloud provider who is available regionally or locally. Because what happens is, and I don't want to get into the technicalities, there's something called CDNs, or effectively how the data gets populated. If they do not have a local presence or a regional presence, there is every possibility that there would be latency, and your event would not succeed as you want to succeed. Because end of the day, again, what you want is that end user to be with you. It's not a live event. You can't, there's no tea, coffee to keep them engaged. So it's something that you need to have the customer engaged. Another important point is ability to upgrade and downgrade. What I mean here is, when you are using a platform, you might end up having users who are in remote countries or remotely attending using mobile phones which are outdated. However, your platform should be able to cater to them, that infrastructure, that network, that device. So if your platform is not smart enough to adjust itself to the need of the end point or the end customer, then you are not really looking at a good solution, because you're losing out. And it happens to us, all of us, you're watching a YouTube video and it suddenly starts, the rotating symbol comes in, we just stop watching it, we look for something else. So what I'm trying to say is, your platform should be able to, when you're projecting something from the digital studio, your platform should be able to change itself, alter the audio and video quality to make sure the content still reaches the end point. And I'm not sure if you guys are aware of, and I'll give an example here. Since COVID came in, suddenly there was a huge increase of users on YouTube and Netflix. And of course, the other ones, Amazon Prime and all the others. Most people didn't realize both of them actually reduced their video quality. People have not noticed, people have not realized, because you're still able to see the content. If I'm watching a web series, I'll continue watching the web series, even if it looks slightly lower, the quality of the image, I wouldn't really bother. So their platforms were smart enough to do that. And that's what you have to now, you have to start thinking in that way. All of us have to start thinking, the events industry has to start thinking in that way, that our platforms need to be smart to be able to upgrade and downgrade. Some of the standard features that we need to look at, definitely, one of the most important ones I would say is matchmaking. Because end of the day, what you are trying to do now is you don't have people live with you. So people are not sitting and watching an event or shaking hands. So how can you make sure they're still interested in a virtual or a hybrid event? So matchmaking to do with people to object. I'm not talking only people to people. So you should be able to do a people to object. So suppose I'm going for a IT event or a technology conference, or sorry, exhibition, and I want to see the latest models of laptops. I should not have to go and search around 500 booths to try and find out the latest models. I should be able to do the matchmaking upfront using your platform and go and meet the likes of Lenovo or IBM or any company, HP, directly. Another thing, I should be able to talk to them. Your platform should allow us to do that. Couple of other things on the platform, the backend has to be integrated. If the backend is not integrated, you are losing on how are the events industry surviving? We survive on the information from the visitor information, the attendee information. So if I cannot capture that information, if my backend is not integrated, then I lose out on that information. So it's imperative that we should always look at platforms which are integrated. And also the streaming tools. Why I mention that? Because streaming tools are, if you talk to some of the partners, the market vendors, they'll say, yes, we will put your link on our tool, on our platform, and people can use the link to see it. But that's not the ideal solution, because if something changes closer to your event or during the event, you are now scrambling to try and change that link. So it's ideal if your streaming tool are integrated with the platform. So any change that happens here automatically gets reflected, and people still they don't see any change. And I'm never going to say, internet speed, etc. are required. These are the easy ones. I'm sure everybody's have ramped up their bandwidth, etc. So that's definitely something that you require to support your platform. So with that, I'll move to the next slide. Kuldip, if you may change the slide. So, and I don't know why I put these numbers like this, 1 and 2 on the other side, so bear with me. I think so. So I'll start with the on my right, and then we'll move to the left. So as I said at the beginning, and Kuldip touched upon the same thing, I think it has to be an integrated customer experience. Attendee span is short. You might have to look really at FOMO. I'm sure all of you know FOMO, fear of missing out. That's a key thing. And your platform, if your digital platform caters to that, where you have things like polls, you have things like Q&A, you have some gifts, people, you might have them with you. So that's why you need to look at, and of course the things that we spoke about, we have to avoid latency. We need to look how best we can provide the content in the best format, ease of access, all devices, how we can ensure countries with low connectivity, low bandwidth still get the right message. So the next one, I'll talk about the digital enablers, which is number 3. Again, it has to be integrated. Your digital environment needs to be integrated. The backend has to, there is a reason why I'm highlighting on the integration with the backend system, because if it is not, you might end up having 2 or 3 people just trying to manage and monitor that. Any questions that come in during an event, any comments, suggestions that come in during an event, if they are not integrated, then you have 2 or 3 people actually monitoring the space, one in the back end, one in the front end. How can you use a leverage cloud? How good is your platform? End of the day, we have to see that the digital enablers should give value to the customer. That's the key. So also now looking at the next one, the bottom right hand corner, next generation technology. I think it is very, very important that we look at now more to use. And people talk about AI, people talk about machine learning all the time, robotics, etc. But really now I think it's a time where when we move into this new digital way of doing things, it's ideal time that we look at the next generation technologies. Some of them I think are very, very important. Augmented reality is I would say a key to really make sure your events are, people like to be in your event because they can get a real feel of what's happening. I would suggest another thing which is important to me is NLP, or the natural language processing. Now you are not catering to or we are not catering to a population which is regional, or it's across the globe. So a person sitting in say Japan or China, somebody sitting in UAE, somebody sitting in the UK, all might be on a same, attending a same event, same conference. And bear in mind, they are trying to do that. Your event platform is supporting them pre-event, during event, and post-event. So if my queries are not answered correctly, because we all speak different, our vocabularies are different, we have different way of talking, different way of writing. If your platform, your digital environment does not cater to all requirements and it does not support NLP, you might be struggling to have that person on board. So effectively you are losing out to an individual. And something again, customer analytics, face detection, these things are the best. We can leverage them as much as we can. We're finding that these are tools already there. They are mature tools. They're already there available through the providers. So when we are looking at our digital platform, we need to look at all of these together. I'll move to the left side, starting from the top, which is the data-driven insights. So now you have a tool, you have a digital environment, but how can you really use the data? And that's predictive analysis is extremely important. Matchmaking, how do you do matchmaking? Unless you can do predictive analysis. You really want your attendee to be engaged in the event. To do that, you do a pre-event matchmaking. Make sure they are with you all the time. And that's where you can use the data that you're gathering or that you have from. And again, touching the same point, your backend has to be integrated. So you have the data that you can use it. Machine learning, again, let's use how much as we can. The last but not least, the digital marketing. I think this is the biggest change I think that is going to happen to all events. In the past, and I don't know if somebody is there on the attendee today who run marketing for companies. And in the past, it was creating banners and fancy looking artwork and all from the marketing team. That's gone out of the window. That's not required anymore. Now you are social media attendee support. Your role has completely changed. You have a lot of work pre-event mostly, and post-event, of course, during the event as well. So there's a lot of change, and a lot more has to be done. Anybody trying to get any information for an event, the first point of call is if somebody says an event is happening in a venue somewhere or by an organizer, they would immediately straight away go to the website and check. So if your website is not updated, absolutely, literally today, if you're not sending out the right messages as a venue, as an organizer, if you're not sending out the right messages, if your attendees do not get the right message at the right time, you are losing out on the attendees. So the digital marketing, I think, plays a very significant role in the new world. And I think something Kuldip already touched upon. I think the role of the marketing team seriously needs to change, and they would be, they need to take much more than what they have at this point in time. And last is kind of the summary, the digital enabled operation. I think Kuldip touched upon this, and I would reiterate the same. I think the concept overall, if you see all the things that I discussed, the important message is, when you are looking to have a digital or a virtual or a hybrid environment, you need to think end to end digitally. Let's not do the way we were doing, in the past, and try to bring in a digital component in it. If we start thinking like that, there are chances that we would fail. If we are really looking to do hybrid events, if we're looking to do virtual events, I think we need to think the end-to-end, the customer journey in a digital way. So your operations, the entire operation has to be digitally enabled. And that's I think that is really the message that I would like to leave you with on this slide. So the event has to be conceived digitally. So with this, I'll move to my last slide. Kuldip, if you can change it. Yes. So yes, it's all nice and nice things we discussed, and I'm sure we'll have many digital events or virtual hybrid events. But there are a lot of challenges, and some of you might question why I have put content as a challenge. And of course, and that's why the picture on the left kind of shows it's a small part. The bigger challenge is still hidden. Content is effectively the known threat. We all know content is the key at this point in time. When a virtual event is happening, you need to have the content which is what will have your audience with you. There is no tea coffee, there is no handshakes. So people span of attentiveness is very low. We can't sit in our desks for 30-40 minutes. So when you're trying to attend an event which is happening somewhere around the globe, and this is a whole day event, there's a study I recently came across, and I don't know if it's 100% correct or not. The attendee span has come down to 1/3. So an event which used to happen for say 9 hours or a day now needs to happen in 3 hours, because that's the attendee span. So what I'm trying to say here is, why do we like TED Talks? A lot of people talk about TED Talks because they are small, bite-sized information, and you don't really spend a lot of time listening to them. And that's how. So the curation of the content is key. So the event managers have a new job description now, which they didn't have in the past. The event managers really need to look at the content and curate it for the right audience, right time, right, and adjust it at the right time so that the message is clear. So that's why I say it's a known threat. We know about it. We need to work on it. The unknown or the hidden threat. Of course, we are all aware of data privacy, security, things like that, information security, and this is happening. And I put in some examples. I mean, still, and as I said at the beginning, Zoom had so many complaints about security, but still their numbers are growing. But that's a fact. We need to ensure our privacy of our attendees, our organizers, exhibitor, venues are kept correctly. We are using completely cloud-based solutions. Our digital environments would store data on cloud infrastructures. So we need to be 100% sure that the data privacy is catered to. The other thing that is happening a lot in the last since COVID started, and again the data point, as you can see, IBM reporting 14,000% increase. So just think out the amount of phishing emails that are coming in. So, and that's going to really impact. So when you're looking at a digital environment, when you're looking at a platform, when you're looking at the way to do digital events, you need to be careful. because end of the day, you are holding a lot of data from your attendees, from your organizers, exhibitors, etc. Last but not the least, regulations. And every country, every region have their own regulations, but nobody has actually come out with any kind of regulations for virtual events or digital events. And we need to be again mindful what can be stored, cannot be stored. Things like GDPR, are they still applicable? How they're applicable? Are the providers ensuring that these are maintained? So this is something again we need to be careful of, mindful of. So I would stop now. Again, I'll hand it back to Kuldip to summarize the session, and then maybe we can look at some of the question answers.
Yep.
Happy to take any more questions. Over to you, Kuldip.
Thank you, Sunando. That's very insightful, rich in content as always. What I'm going to do now is just kind of summarize some of the key takeaways from this session. I would also encourage anybody, if they have a question, to throw some of the chat on the chat board. I've also seen there's a couple of observations. I would say I'll get to those, and we'll share those with everybody. But just to sum up, well, what do you think is the new norm for the events industry is going to look like? Well, we know that client expectations have changed. We are now moving, COVID has accelerated the momentum to work with digital technologies. We know that the hybrid model now and in the short and medium term is going to be a preferred way of delivering events. And that digital technology for events is not new. There's lots of players in the marketplace. Sunando mentioned vFairs, there's Cvent, there's Brella, and there's others. And I was talking to Sunando. I think even Ungerbach are thinking about putting on a virtual event. So, I think there's going to be multiple formats of events with multiple audiences giving different messages, and making sure that there's more digital inclusion, maybe smaller groups of gatherings, obviously, but then people can attend virtually across the world. We have to be sensitive with our budgets. All the world and everybody's suffered financially. So we need to be prudent, but as I said before, the ones who innovate and invest and in the digital world has shown previously, they're the ones that become successful in the future. I think be it a hybrid model or an on-premise model for events, we're going to have to embrace new disinfection and cleaning protocols. Obviously, there's an impact in increased operational costs, including F&B. And as Sunando said, improved content creation and marketing, being very strategic and understanding who they're marketing to the event, the change in role for the marketeers, the event planners, and doing a lot more social media presence, and hitting that target audience with the right content at the right time, faster, quicker, is definitely the trend going forward. There's going to be the physical security, as well as cybersecurity. As Sunando mentioned, the increase in bombing in Zoom as well, increase in phishing emails. We need to ensure that we're protecting our assets and our data, and making sure we're also thinking about not just virtual events, but other technology innovation that can help at this current time. Facial recognition, heat that can heat sense, people counting, so that we know who's in the event at what time, and making sure that we can ensure that they're compliant with the 2 meter social distancing parameters. I know one vendor. I'm technology agnostic, but I know Field Drive are doing very well in the facial recognition space, and they've got some great technology. And back to that data capture piece, making sure that we got good reporting processes, and the marketeers are now becoming more digitally savvy and social media savvy, and the new ways of working. Lots of platforms emerging. I would strongly urge people to take the advice that Sunando said, understand your requirements, understand your infrastructure, what your connectivity requirements are, what your bandwidth requirements are, how does the Wi-Fi connect in, what's the security parameters, how do we integrate back with the back office systems, so we do the data capture. That's very, very important. But what I do see is a lot of change. There's a lot of change. And I think we need to embrace the change that's happening, not only that COVID-19 has given us that opportunity, and certainly for technology leaders to step up to the plate, which they have and have been doing, certainly in terms of moving to remote working. I think that will continue. And I think the organizations that will thrive are the ones that are striving now to be innovative. With that said, I'm going to stop talking and open up the floor. I think what we'll do, Sunando, is to reach out to some of the comments.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Let's grab.
I think.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think there are a couple of comments on the marketing campaigns and all from Petra and from Irash. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's a big change, and I re-emphasize the same point that we need to think of an event now completely digital. If we don't think it like that, we would not think what are the roles. And I think Kelly has also mentioned now upskill of teams, etc. I think that's the most important, significant thing. If we start thinking events digitally, that this is how we are going to run the event going forward, I think we will be able to map out the entire the chain, the customer's journey or the event journey, and then we can identify the right marketing plans, which have to be entirely digital now, because you're dealing with people who are not going, would be expecting everything digitally. You want to add something, Kuldip?
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on Kelly's comment, and I really do like it. Is that she's quoted that our show floor is now a studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
and I would echo that statement. Thank you for that, Kelly, because what we're saying is that the reinvention of the business model and thinking about how you operate in the future is really key, with that upskilling, that retraining, using those platforms, being technology savvy, but doing it securely, embracing e-marketing, social media campaigns, and getting that data, using that data to predict the requirements of a multi-event event, if you want to call it. I think we're in a new world, and there's a new norm emerging, and I think this hybrid model is here to. It was here in some shape or form, but now it's just going to be even more prevalent in the next 12 to 18 months as a minimum. The calendar events have been pushed out and out and out. I still think that there's a need to have face-to-face interactions to build up relationships and trust and rapport. That will never disappear, but moving to that, that upskilling for the hybrid model is absolutely key. And so thank you for that comment, Kelly. I'm just reading back Petra's as well. Yeah, she said she's moving to more kind of social media campaigns and digital marketing as well to reduce costs, getting rid of the online magazines. Yep, absolutely agree with that. Is any I'm going to shift to unmuting everybody, so that if you have any questions, we would more than happy to answer those questions.
Yeah. As we get some questions, I'd just like to highlight one more point, which I I think to kind of in the summary, and again people can comment. It's we need to understand from whatever way we are doing digitally, moving to a virtual hybrid environment. It's not about one size fits all would not work. So each event or each type of event requires different way of thinking and delivering it. So a webinar platform would not work for a exhibitions platform or for a conference platform and vice versa. So we need to, again, going back to the same point, we need to think the customer journey digitally. And I think we would be able to identify the right tools, right techniques that would take us there.
Yeah, and just to expand on that point, in my work recently, I've been, we tend to in organizations think inside out. We don't think outside in. So what I mean by that, we don't put ourselves in the shoes of the visitor and the customer to understand their journey. Now that journey has changed because with lockdown and lack of travel and reduced mass gatherings, we need to think of what the customer wants as he's at home remotely trying to have an experience and understand what the limitations are. When we were designing this event, this online cloud event, me and Sunando were saying, well, what's the time span in terms of slides that we present to Q&A and questions? And I said, well, 30-40 minutes of presentations is more than enough. There's lots of points, quite detailed slides. And I think, making sure getting that, again, back to the content, enough messages, focused, and keeping attention spans is really key. And because what you can't do virtually is sense body language. I can't sense if Sunando's really turned off with what I'm saying, as I can't with Ramunda or Bonner or
I think
others.
there's a question, Kuldip.
Yep, go for it.
From John. Are the existing event management platforms up to the needs of the post-COVID world? Yes and no. I would say more no than yes. The event management platforms are event management platforms. To the new COVID world, what has really happened is all of them have quickly tried to ramp up. And I think we spoke about some examples. Angobok, they've tried to bring in a component where they can use the registration platform. What they've done is they've connected with GoToWebinar. So they're linking up platforms. So they're kind of doing the integrations piece that we spoke about. Products like M-Event, I was talking to them, a German company, largely used in Middle East, in Europe, across Europe, and they realized that they had a huge potential with the COVID situation and have started ramping up. The platforms which were already there and they're good, they're fairly very well organized, the likes of vFairs, 6Connex and all. Just to let you know, they're not taking any orders till October because they are absolutely swamped and inundated with requests. So yes, the other ones, the pure event management platforms, are trying to quickly ramp up, and they're doing, and they have done quantum jumps in the last 6 to 8 weeks. And some of them, the likes of Cvent, Brella, have ramped up, and events, as I said, Angobok. So I've actually spoken with most of them, and I'm seeing how they're moving on. So yes, some of them have ramped up, but some of them are still catching up.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and all these ramp ups. So Zoom's been ramping up. It's been sending out updates every other week because obviously you had its security threats. They are adding new features all the time, and I can only see that investment increasing. And I think again, I would caution to do a proper project. You want to maybe grab 1 or 2 or 3 of these platforms and try to do a POC, but you need to understand what you're looking for, what your requirements are before you do that pilot, and see if it works. So you trial it and see then if you can scale it up. But you need to be it's quite important to just kind of make sure that you understand your integration needs and your requirements and go forward. I have a question for you, Sunando, if I don't mind. Is there another
I think
question?
I saw, I think Kelly was raising her hand. I think if you
Okay.
can unmute her, if
Okay.
you want to say.
I've unmuted everybody. So
Now I can see she's
oh,
still unmute.
Kelly, you should be
Yeah,
unmuted now.
should be good now.
Thank you. Thank you. I refused the invitation to unmute myself the first time.
Okay.
I was keen to ask a bit more about, I think Sunando, you talked about it in your section of the presentation, the live streaming into the platform, because can you talk a little bit more about that? I probably missed the crux of the issue when you were talking about it, so apologies, but live streaming into the platform, and you said it was important that it streams into the platform for a reason. Was it a user experience reason, or was it something to do with stability or security?
So what happens is if you are streaming without and I mean, you have a platform, obviously you are using the platform for the event, and the platform is not integrated with the streaming tools. So take an example, Zoom is a good example. Zoom is a platform which also has inbuilt streaming tools. So it's a software based streaming tool. There are hardware based streaming tools also. Actually, the hardware based are better because they use the infrastructure, which is the network that's already there on the cloud infrastructure. So what happens is, if it's a, so what happens with most of the event management companies, what they'll say is, we will host the link onto your you give us the link and we will host it, so people can, using YouTube, on Facebook, etc., people can log in and view the content. But what happens is, if during the event with a short notice something changes at your back end, say in your digital studio or something in your event, you are now running around trying to change that link, because it's a hosted link and it's not an integrated link. Had it been an integrated platform, any changes in the back end will automatically will work seamlessly. So
Okay.
it is important that if a streaming tool is integrated within the platform, or I mean, there's a prior integration, then it makes so much more sense to have it.
And so then would you have that, to make that work, you need an on-site AV team filming and sorting out your streaming for you, and then you need your platform.
Correct.
Is that right? You need two different teams of people.
Correct. Absolutely. You need two different teams, but what happens is, in this case, if it's an integrated platform, whatever you're recording with your AV team, it's automatically on the platform and it goes in directly, right, instead of you doing there's a middleman in between if it's not integrated.
And do you think it's best practice to get those two teams talking to each other? So get your AV team to talk to the platform just to make sure they're understanding the two different elements, or does that not really matter?
No, it needs to. I think, and that's where I think, and that's I think you're opening up a complete subject, which is the event manager's role has changed now. So yeah. I can talk about the next half an hour, to be honest, because the event manager needs to now really look at the content and really work on the content, really work all these things together, which in the past they might not have done it. So yes, there is they need to talk to each other, and again, the moment we are looking at a digital event, I think we need to draw the journey with our digital hats on, and then then we see how the roles fit in across. So yes, I mean, it needs to happen. That integration needs to happen. The work needs to be done together.
Okay, thank you. That really helps. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'm conscious of the time, everybody. It's gone past the hour. I think what we'll do is we'll close the webinar, but wanted to just say thank you. Thank you for coming along. Thank you for your questions, your observations. You have our contact details. Feel to reach out to myself or Sunando if we haven't been clear. Please give us feedback. If you think we should do it again, or there's a particular area that you want to explore, we're more than happy to do that. And thank you again. Stay safe and well.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I think you can take them out if you can. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Hold on a second. Let's.
Yeah, that's one of my colleagues, Asma. I think she might have been. Yeah, she might have
It's
got
gone.
pulled by the children.
Just hold on a second. Let me stop recording.
Yeah.
Okay.